Okie dokies. We are in Matthew chapter 14. Jesus walks on the water. What a classic. Here we go. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So Matthew is the only one to record the account of Peter walking on the water with Jesus. And as we see this Jesus walking on the water, we find he sends the boys out on the boat. This is what you might call Storm 2.0. You see, Storm 1.0, Jesus was asleep in the boat. Storm 2.0, now they're sailing with Jesus not in the boat. In both storms, they were doing the will of the Lord. They were with Jesus, or they were going where Jesus told them to go. And yet, a storm. I don't know where I have it written down. Perhaps in Luke, perhaps in John. But I was just keeping track of all the different types of storms. Because we do. We see different storms in life. And let's see here. There's storms of instruction. That's what we see here. It's a storm where Jesus is trying to teach them something. It's not a storm of correction. A storm of correction would be Jonah. We find that God sends a storm there, and it's supposed to be getting Jonah back on track, right? There's also storms of destruction, where the evil one is the one doing it. It was a mighty storm that came and blew the house down where Job's children were at. It was an attack of the enemy. So how do we know, right? Am I in a storm of correction? Am I in a storm of instruction? Am I in a storm of destruction where it's just an attack of the enemy? Well, the first thing is, I guess, is just, are we in the will of the Father? Now, with Jonah, the answer was no. But with Job, it was a yes. And with the disciples here, it was a yes. And so then the question is does it really matter at that point? If I recognize that I'm in the will of the Father, I don't think this is God correcting me. Well, if Satan is trying to destroy you, if he's trying to attack you, well, God will turn that into a storm of instruction if we allow God to. And here, these guys were going where Jesus told them to go, And obviously, this was a really bad storm. You know, the distance across the Galilee is not that great. And when it mentions here in the fourth watch that Jesus comes out to them, so we're talking about being like in the middle of the early morning. They set off at evening, and it's like 8, 9 hours later that they are now having Jesus walk out to them. So they should have made it a whole lot further across that lake unless this storm was very, very bad. Jesus walks out. I forget if it's John's gospel, where it says, and he would have passed them by. He walks out on the water, and he would have passed them by. This is one of the texts. There's a good handful of texts on the road to Emmaus where he would have kept on walking. Other places, there are multiple texts in the Bible where we see essentially Jesus, he would have kept going unless they had asked him to stop, unless they invited him into the boat, unless they called out to him. I think that's part of the instruction of the storm, is God's kind of there waiting to be called on. Well, here I am. We see in Daniel chapter 9 where Daniel's praying, and we see an angel who's set loose to answer his prayers. But he gets into a fight with the Prince of Persia and all that, right? Well, what we find is that the moment Daniel prayed, there was the angel. The angel was sent out. It was like he was waiting to be summoned. So too, as we go through storms, it's a reminder that we need to be asking God and summoning God and requesting God, petitioning God, asking God to be a part of this whole thing because, yeah, we want God's help. We don't want to do this on our own. And so when Jesus comes, and then Peter has to go out on the water. And maybe to make a long story short, rather than diving really, really deep into this, like Peter was about to dive deep when he saw the boisterousness of the wind, Peter falls in the water and has to be delivered by Jesus, saved by Jesus. He has to. I'm not talking salvation here, right? Like, let's not use that word in a play on that. But no one else tried to walk on the water. And that's why no one else in the Bible ever got to walk on water but Peter. Peter fell in. Peter essentially got rebuked. "Oh, you of little faith, why do you doubt?" Those are actually very strong words, which, I guess sometimes it's just like, man, Jesus, hey, lay off the guy. He was trying something. But you know what? He was remembering, man, Peter, you were so close. But at the same time, no one else tried. And I guess I'd rather try and fail than go through life and feel like I never tried. I'd rather try to do great things for God and maybe end up in the water needing to get saved. No one else needed to get saved. No one else. Everyone on the boat was happy. But no one else got to walk on the water. And I think that's something where we can go through life playing it safe, doing the easy thing, not extending ourselves, not putting ourselves out there. If you never put yourself out there to people, you'll never get hurt by them. You just don't talk to people, don't make friends, don't sacrifice, don't try and help, don't pour your heart into someone because they might break it if you do that. But that's the whole thing, is that we just simply see, if we don't try, we'll never experience. I want to experience walking on the water with Jesus, even if I mess it up. I'd rather do that than just live my life in the boat. So, let's look here. Verses 34, 5, and 6, just so that we can finish the chapter this week. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him. They sent out into all the surrounding region, brought to him all who were sick, and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. And as many as touched it were made perfectly well. What comes to mind, how far back do we have to go? Oh, it's a few chapters backwards. The blind man, the mute man speaks, the wind and the wave, right? You've got to go back a few chapters to find the demoniac. Remember Jesus went over to the east side of the lake, to the land of Gennesaret, and there was Swine Lake, right? All the pigs and all that stuff. It's just a reminder that they kicked him out. They wanted him to leave after he healed a demoniac, aka Legion. Yet this time when he goes over there, people bring the sick, and they beg that they might just touch the hem of his garment. Why? Well, the demoniac who requested to go with Jesus, take me with you, Jesus said, no, you stay here and you share what's been done in your life. And the next time Jesus returns, the towns are waiting for him. So it's a little fun nugget in those last few verses, but it shows this is the testimony, or it's the testimony of what this guy had done. This is the fruit of his witness. And so there's a whole sermon there, and we're trying to wrap up. But the guy desired one thing, and Jesus says, no, I have a different plan for you. But the guy was faithful with that plan that Jesus gave him. And now we're seeing the fruit and the testimony, because Jesus probably knew, you come along with me and you'll be a part of all that what we do. But if I leave you here, there will be a great harvest the next time I come back. And so let's just remember that. As long as Jesus leaves you here, he's hoping that you will be a testimony of his work in your life, so that when he comes back, there will be a great harvest. That sounds really catchy. God is good. All right, guys. God bless. I'll see you guys around, and we'll be in chapter 15 of Matthew next week. So join in. Adios.